Welcome to Rich Your Soul, Jason Sisneros. It's great to have you join us today.
It's great to be with you, Rocky. I'm excited to spend some time with you.
And I am excited to learn from you today. Let's start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
Great question. What did they teach me? Not very well. I can promise you that. But my beginning, it's like everybody watching your show. Thanks. First of all, thanks for your commitment to putting out great. And as we were talking before the show, wise information to people who are still seeking it from the right sources. And I just wanted to say thank you. I've watched quite a bit of your stuff getting preparation for the show, and it's super helpful for people to watch it. And your audience already knows that. So thank you for having me. And my upbringing, I think it's the same. Once you realize that you're a business owner, at some point in time, you realize you have this weird DNA twerk, that now you belong to this group of people that is less than 10%. Here in the United States, out of 330 million people, there's 33 million business owners. And Mark Andreessen said recently, he said, if you're a true entrepreneur, if you're a true business owner, you can't not be a business owner. Fate will lead you to this thing called being a business owner at some point in time. You might be working for somebody happily right now, whatever. And I think that what I've noticed is a lot of business owners have very similar stories from their childhood that involve some kind of trauma, right? And most of us have some kind of a mommy issue or some kind of a daddy issue, or some kind of we were embarrassed when we were kids kind of thing. And we use business in the beginning as a way to earn the world's love. It's a commonality. I mean, been all over the place, learning about this stuff. And mine was no different. My adopted father, I came from, my mom had me at 17 years old, didn't know my dad. She married a guy that was a troublemaker, sort of motorcycle, drugs kind of a guy. He was very abusive, ended up going to prison when I was 17 for attempted murder of me and my mom, and a lot of abuse before that, which gave me my initial core, which your watchers will understand. That's our environment. You do what you know because you're around it. And so what did I do? At 12 years old, they were using me to deliver drugs. And at 16, I became a collector because I was a damn good fighter, and I had a lot of anger. And so I was a collector for a period of time. I did what I knew. And between sports and some football coaches and, what I call the angels that were dropped into my life at exactly the right times for these things to happen, I was shown through the crack of a door another life that was possible through these people. And so, through a bunch of experiences, I was able to, go through those doors, see another future, have a son at an early age myself, and think to myself, I don't want this lifestyle for my kids. And so I started developing something like most of your watchers and especially business owners, I started to develop on a piece, just a white piece of paper, a future for myself that I didn't quite know how to go about it. And business came along and was one of those things. So I was taught about money, that it belonged to the rich. That was demonstrated to me. It was brought up to, if you didn't have money, that you were a lower life form. That was demonstrated to me. I was brought up that money, in my family, you did whatever was necessary to be able to get it, including breaking the law. And so I was taught some really bad ideas about money. Cash accounting at a super high level because we were doing drugs, right?
Let's stop for a second there. And I don't, this is the question that's always burning in my mind. These people who sell drugs, they've got phenomenal sales systems, delivery systems, logistics systems, cash systems, money movement systems,
AR
employee
recovery
systems,
AR
everything. It's like, if you would just put this into real business, you do phenomenal.
Exactly. Well, I'm an example of that because that was how I was raised. There was at least an entrepreneurial bent to it, and when I got out of it, it was, it's again, this is the shift that everybody makes. It's not just my life, but when you stop doing something because, I could look down the path to my future. I looked at my brother. I could look at my friends. They were either dead or in prison. And so I had a pretty good idea of where I was headed. And I was really, really good at everything that I did. So I was going to become eventually notorious. Right. And so I knew where I was going to end up. And, and I think that that's the decision when I decided to stop all of that. What's next? And I think that's what people deal with. I go, okay, I don't want to do that job anymore. Maybe I want out of that business. Maybe I want out of that relationship. Maybe I want to, turn my physical, energetic health around so I'm not sick. What do I do next? And that's the real important question that I think your show answers every time you put it on, is some ideas about what that next step might be. And for me, it was to go to get a legitimate job. And I started peeling logs for cabins for, I think at the time, $5.50 an hour. Got a big raise and went and started digging a sump in the bottom of a mine for my father-in-law. Got a big raise to $8 an hour to be 3 levels down underground, shoveling crap all day, and then down there going, is this all there really is to life? And I started thinking, because I didn't graduate from high school, there was a criminal record, there was all this stuff in my background. And I was like, I got to figure out something different to do, or I'm never going to be able to support my family. And so that's when I decided to become a journeyman carpet layer. And I was just started out as a helper, and that eventually led to me buying my first business, which was in carpet, window coverings, all that kind of stuff. That was my first business.
So what caused you to turn around, though? Because very few people make that switch to say, I'm going to go legitimate. And especially when you're making stacks of money going to $5.50 an hour.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, it's a very good question, because I know exactly when it happened. My son had just been born, and I was already thinking, how do I get out of this lifestyle? Because I don't want that to end up with him. And I was at the bar one night with my friends, and I was telling them, I'm like, look, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't know what to do, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, yeah, right. What else are you going to do? My nickname was Psycho at the time. Like, I was already on my way to being notorious, right? I was going to be good at whatever I decided to put my mind to. But they said, yeah, we'll talk about that later, but we've got a deal going down out in the parking lot a little bit later. And I was like, okay, what do you want? So I was protection on that one. We go out, we do this deal out in the parking lot, and I see the guy that's, they were trying to rip us off. We had the stuff, they didn't have the money. And the guy came across, and I pushed my friend out of the way just like this. And the knife from the guy came down and went into my chest, all the way across my chest. I've got a scar, almost killed me. And it was in that moment when the knife hit my chest, when my grandmother, every time I would get beat up so bad when I was a child that I would get locked in my room until my face would heal, my grandma always made sure that I had a Bible. And I wasn't really a religious man up until about 3 or 4 years ago, but I did read that Bible as a series of stories, not really from a religious perspective, but a series of stories. When that knife went in my chest, this Bible verse popped into my head, and it was, the sins of the father are born onto the children. And it was further confirmation that if I survive this, I'm done. I'm not doing it, because I could see it wasn't about me. It was about the fact that my son was eventually going to be staring down these same circumstances if I didn't make a different decision. And so I just was like, and at the time I was about to get married, and her brother, was a builder, and he put me to work, and then her dad worked at a mine. And so he gave me a job. So that was just those little decisions, but I knew I didn't want my kids to experience what I had grown up.
Kids are funny like that, right? They get us to change.
Crazy. So crazy in so many ways, brother. So especially the girl ones,
It's funny, and we'll talk about this more, but I've come to see how much of a self-development journey entrepreneurship can be.
So good or so bad, right? Because people they've got mommy and daddy issues, and it's like, your business it's meant to develop and polish the great parts of you and to eliminate the weakness. That's one way I would say it. But if you realize it's to get rid of the weaknesses, it's not to exacerbate them and to bring those issues into a business, which is a pure representation of who you are, whether it's cleaning toilets or painting or whatever. It's a pure representation of who you are and your basis of what you believe about the world. So you should not be, and if you do, and you bring your trauma into that business, you should do whatever you can to get rid of that and not bring it into your business. But to your point, is it to be a great business. And I didn't know we are going to go down this path, but there's two kinds of businesses. There's ethical and unethical business. Unethical business is like Amazon's and Microsoft's and, some of these big businesses that can get away with underhanded, like through lobbyists and getting an insider trading and, that kind of. Ethical businesses is the rest of us. Small and mid-sized companies, 0 to 500 employees. We have no choice but to behave biblically or people will not do business with us. That's the difference. And why I love small and mid-sized businesses so much is because it forces us, even if we don't believe those things, even if we haven't been classically trained in those behaviors, it forces you to build a sustainable business, to be one of the 5% that succeeds and does not fail, like the 95% that do. You must get ethically in alignment with your behaviors, telling the truth, treating your employees correctly, doing the right thing with money, paying your taxes, those kind of things. So I think it aligns you with overcoming whatever traumas that you pick up as a kid. I believe that wholeheartedly.
I know you've worked a lot with Tony Robbins, and let's chat about that. But one of the things that I noticed with Tony, and I think one of his go-to questions is always when he's with someone, I think it's along the lines of, whose love do you crave more, your mother's or your father's?
Yeah, 100%.
Because he's looking for that wound that you keep talking about.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
So what brought you to Tony Robbins?
Yeah. So the short version of it is I lost everything. I crashed 3 businesses in the beginning of my career. And when that happened, I took what little money I had. I packed up my house that I was getting, that they were foreclosing on, into a U-Haul, a vehicle that I stole from it was a friend of mine that had a U-Haul, and he just said, go take it. I'm not going to tell my dad. It was stolen, and I filled it with stuff and left town. And it was a horrific part of my life. I tell people all the time, they're like, yeah, if my business goes out of business, it was 6 years to get anywhere near back to on my feet because it was so destructive. Ruined a marriage, moved me away. I left town, like all the stuff. We didn't see my kids for a while, like terrible, terrible point in my life. While during that period of time, I ended up going to a homeless shelter for the first and only time in my life for food because I hadn't eaten in a few days. And I went in and there was a rotten banana and some cauliflower with that black mold kind of forming on top. That was all that was left because I refused to walk in with the other losers. So I went in with the rest of the stuff was available. And anyways, the guy handed me 2 things. He handed me a Bible, and I was kind of pissed at God at the time. So I threw that back at him. I'm like, I don't have any need for that. But he gave me Tony Robbins' book. And I read it, cover to cover. I was living on this cool little beach, this little beach bench. And I was reading through it. I got to the end of it, and it's a thick book, Awaken the Giant Within. And I got to the end of it, and one thought couldn't leave my mind. And it's in your moments of decision where your destiny is shaped. And it was fascinating to me because at that point in my life, at my low point, it was everybody else's fault. It was my dad's fault. It was my adopted father's fault. It was my mom's fault. It was the government's fault. It was the economy's fault. It was, white people. It was black people. It was Asian people. It was women people. It was every people. But that phrase, it's in your moment of decisions where in your moment of, it's in your moment of decision where your destiny is shaped. And I was like, oh man, I am where I am because of my own decisions. That was a hard pill to swallow for me. And, over the period of time, nothing changes overnight, as people know, but I started thinking differently. And that led me to getting a job and led me to going to my very first Tony Robbins event. And I went to that event, I met Tony, and eventually went to work for him as one of his speakers. And, and then spent the better part of 4 years traveling the world with him and his team. And that's what led me to Tony.
How was that experience to be able to travel with them?
Unreal. It's unreal. Like, because I was going into this as I was going through these 3 bankruptcies, and it was 3 businesses. It was 1 bankruptcy, but it was 3 businesses that collapsed because, like every other business owner, I have entrepreneurial ADD, and I can't just have one successful business. I have to drain that from its profits and start 2 other crappy ones so that I can keep myself entertained. Right. And so I had 3 notebooks. I took copious notes as I was going through my bankruptcies and as my company was falling apart. And I took those notebooks with me, and on the road with Tony Robbins, all I really wanted to do, people that get around Tony get drawn into his fame and that lifestyle and stuff. I wasn't there for that. I was there because he had and could open doors to business owners that I could have 15-minute conversation. I would have breakfast with. I would take them out to coffee, those kind of things to say, in this situation, what would you have done differently? And that's where I really learned the heart of a business owner is to share and to support each other. I really learned that during that process because they all opened their doors to me. And legendary business owners that you wouldn't think that you would, you could never get around them. I would just ask a question and gave of their time pretty freely. And I left that with Tony learning obviously how to become a speaker. That was invaluable. Speaking over 3,000 times as one of his speakers, being in that environment, learning from him, watching all those transformations happen. But for me, the greatest value was the 3 notebooks that I ended up with that were filled with new wisdom and balanced against real world challenges that I had in my business. So that time was, I couldn't put a value on it, Rocky. I really couldn't. It's everything. I had a $60 million exit back in 2019. And I can directly point back to because of those notebooks, why that happened.
Did you get to meet Keith Cunningham during that time or no?
Keith, he has been a mentor of mine. I sat on his chairman's council for 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah. And an unbelievable human being. Again, taught me, I've got his note. I could tell you, I've got stuff within reach. Keith is always within reach.
I am a big fan of his book, The Road Less Stupid.
Great book. Yeah, great book. We were with him as he was writing it, and we got some early kind of input on his chairman council to hear some of the excerpts and some of the stuff. But yeah, absolute genius. For those of you that don't know who Keith Cunningham is, he's the Rich Dad and the Rich Dad Poor Dad books that you read about. That's him.
You didn't meet the guy who pretended to write those books.
Nor did I want to.
We can't
go there, Rocky.
I think people realize all of the behind the scenes of all these different types of things and how things come to be and what's real and what's not. And actually, we talked about that just before we hit record. It's like when I was growing up, wisdom had value. Today, it seems like it's kind of lost its value temporarily, or maybe it's just that it's not celebrated. The wise people are all just hiding out in the corner, enjoying life, turning off the social and everything else and the noise and doing it that way. I mean, you've been around a lot of people. What have you seen?
I see a deep thirst. It has been a desert for wisdom, for principles, for celebration of those things that are worth celebrating. It's been a desert, but I believe that there's, I was just with 300 unbelievable young people in Chicago. I was speaking at an event for them, ages 20 to about 26. And they're desperately thirsty for learning these things. And I was speaking of the principles that we talk about. And they're like, oh my gosh, I've never heard that. Like everybody makes it about the Lambo and everybody makes it about the jet. And I'm like, it couldn't be about anything less. Unless you're a car guy, be a car guy, right? But these things are not the trappings of a successful life, in real life. That's not kind of how the world rolls. But so to your point though, I would say that wisdom, whether it's popular or not, will always belong to the successful. There are principles that are tried and true, and a principle under pressure from a technology or from a new generation always stands strong to come out the other side as remaining a principle. So I have good hope. I have a lot of good hope. And it got so crazy for a while, this. It got so crazy for a while that people were like, yeah, let's never try that again. Like if it was a big experiment, like let's not do that again, at least for another 20 years. So we'll see.
Well, just like politics, the pendulum swings back and forth.
Yes.
This pendulum too will swing back and forth.
Amen.
And that's why I think that young generation and maybe people just a little bit younger than them are stepping away from social media. They're changing the way they live lives. They're not behaving as badly as we did, and they're not putting up with bad behavior as much as we did
Right.
either. So I think the pendulum will swing back. It takes a while,
Yeah.
but it'll happen over time.
I agree with you. And by the way, you can't build on anything but principles, you know? So while there's all this craziness going on, there's still principled people, there's still principled business owners. The world, as it flows back and forth, you know, I think about our people. And when I say our people, I say these merchants, the business owners, of which there's less than 10% of us. It is a specific DNA. We do think differently. We are different people. There's been 2 laws passed in the United States that changed the world for those of us that are you know, either lucky or inflicted with this thing called being an entrepreneur. And one was back in 1869, and it was called the Sherman Act. And the Sherman Act was the very first time that a centralized government in the history of mankind, ever or since, to stand up and say, no, we're gonna stop the coagulation or aggregation of too much money in too few pockets through what has become the Antitrust Act over time. Right? That's one thing. Second thing is that because they know there's only about 10% of us, and because we are the largest driver of the GDP, 17 to 18 trillion dollars is done by the small and mid-sized business owner. Okay, 60% of the hiring is done by small and mid-sized business owners. And so they gave us this protection called bankruptcy, because they go, these people, we need more of them. And if we can't manufacture more of them because there's only 10%, generally speaking, then what we need to do is give them a quick bounce back to get those, because they're too stupid to know that they're not going to be able to do anything else, because they just ruin their reputation, their credit, you know, their familial relations. We got to give them another chance. So bankruptcy. So those are 2 things that I think are the government here in the United States has gotten right that other people have gotten wrong over time.
Hopefully we learn the lessons and don't have to go through them. We can learn them from somebody else, which is what I love to do.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people seem to love to learn them themselves, and that's your choice. I prefer not to take that path, and I'm okay with it. One of the things you talk about is living that custom tailored life, that it's not a fantasy, it's a strategy. So let's dig into that. What do you mean by that?
So the principle, again, these things, I am one of those people that has to beat my head against the wall to learn things. So I wish I was more like you, but, but it's taken hard knocks to learn some of these things. I learned that this custom tailored idea developed over time for me. And here's how it showed up. I realized this phrase came to me, and it was everybody exits, right? I was sitting at a funeral, of which I've been to many. And I always think about the fact that, you know, whatever was in that person's life is not in that casket with them. It's not there. It's not, their business isn't in there. Their relationships are not in there. And their cars are not in there. Their money's not in there. It's just them. And they leave everything else behind. And it dawned on me in business that this is where our tagline came from for our business is everybody exits, how matters. So it's that how mattering that got me to thinking, okay, let's look at my first 3 exits, because I did exit. Those were what I call involuntary exits. I didn't want somebody shows up, you run out of cash, somebody puts chain around you, taxes don't get paid, whatever. You don't want to stop, but you have to, because you're done. You're out of business. And that's where 95% of people land with their business within a 10-year span, 50% of them within a year. That number, Rocky, which we should think about, hasn't changed in 80 years. That is a consistent percentage. So then you think about, you know, in that involuntary exit, who are those people? Who was I listening to? I was listening to the gurus of the day. I was buying the newest package of marketing materials, right? I was hiring the consultant, you know? That's who I was listening to. Did it drive me? Did I learn anything from that kept me from having an involuntary exit? No. Did any of that back then? Now there's been legendary launches where people are marketing geniuses getting celebrated all over the place. And no matter what, nobody goes, oh, does that lower it? I live in a world, 10 million children are trafficked every year. If I'm having an impact, it goes from 10 million to 9,900,999 to 9.5 million to 9 million to 8 million. In domestic violence, every 11 minutes, there's a woman being beaten in her home. So if I'm having an impact, it's going to go to 12 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. There's every 4 seconds, there's somebody dying of starvation. If I'm having an impact, it's going to go to 5 seconds, to 20 seconds, to a minute, right? Those kind of things. So when I look at when I'm doing business, are the things that I'm applying going to impact that 95% coming down to 90%? How do we keep more people in business longer? Right. And the 7% of people that ever sell their businesses when they get put on the market, how do we turn that into 10%? Right. And of those, when there's 50% of them that fall apart post acquisition, how do we take that number down to 40%? See, I'm a numbers guy, and I have to look at the impact. I want to hear what you have to say.
I think the reason most business owners fail is they aren't numbers people. They do what they love, and accounting and numbers are just not on the list. And when you don't look at the numbers, you experience what you experienced. That's just the reality of it.
Because I wasn't a numbers guy.
So you became one.
I became one. Here's the second. So the second verse, so that's involuntary exits. If everybody exits, how matters. So what would be the second one? The second one that I encountered was I built a business that somebody else wanted to buy. Proud moment for me. I was like, this is way better than involuntary exit. Got it. I sat down across the table from somebody who knew what they were doing, right? You think about how many cars do you buy in a lifetime? Maybe 15, 17. And everybody's like, oh, I'm going to go in there. I'm going to win in that negotiation. You're like going in against somebody who sold 30 cars last month. You're not going to win. And so me sitting down across the table from somebody who knew how to buy businesses, I got my butt handed to me. They paid me probably half of what it was worth. It took me 3 years to get it. I had to stay involved. And so that frame, although more successful than involuntary exit, was called what I call dictated exit. And that dictated exit means that the three primary drivers of a successful sale of your business are three things: pricing, timing, and terms. And in a dictated exit, you control none of those. You're at the whim of somebody else who knows what they're doing. That is exactly when I went, those people sitting across the table from me, I want to know what they know, right? And then I got into it and I'm like, from Keith Cunningham actually is what drove this for me. He said, business is not a bathrobe, one size does not fit all. So I was like, oh, so we got to custom tailor every experience that I have with a business to the desired outcome of that business. For myself, I wasn't doing coaching. I didn't have a consulting business. I was building my own private equity firm, which is what I exited back in 2019. No debt, no partners, no investors, all mine. Right. And so now I was like, oh, custom tailored now, because somebody who's buying the business knows what they're going to buy. They have something called a buy box. So your business, if you're watching this, your business is already predetermined that somebody wants to buy it. There's about $4 trillion worth of dry powder out there with private equity firms right now trying to buy businesses, and there's not enough of them. Okay. There's just not enough. There's not enough well-run businesses for them to be able to do it. So now they're getting into the business of what I do, which is turning them around, buying them at low prices. That's what I did. I bought businesses that nobody else wanted because I know how to fix them. And so now I'm like, okay, so there's already somebody out there that has the description of your business. If you could build it to match that, you got money waiting for you for the asset that you're building, for you and your family to have life-changing money. Our brokerage specializes in the $15 to $30 million exit. We do smaller ones, we do bigger ones, but that 15 to 30 million is life-changing for most businesses. And it's about 18 months to 3 years worth of work to custom tailor your business for the person who actually wants to buy it and has the money to do so.
What have you found with PE? Because my experience has not been great.
Yeah, they're killers, and they're I'll tell you that it's a great question, because private equity has changed dramatically in the last 10 years. Prior to that, they're not, I would never say you're going to have a great experience with them, because they're straight up killers. They know what they're doing. The good ones know what they're doing. And before you had, before 20 years ago or so, you had 1,500 private equity firms, because it wasn't a popular thing yet. It hadn't caught on, to the idea that this is an investment that outpaces all other real estate and crypto and stock market. It is a great investment. when you are dealing with a good private equity firm, because they know how to do this. So 20 years ago, 1,500 of them, about 500 of them, really, really good. That's who I learned from, was those people that know exactly what they're doing. Nowadays, you have 7,000 private equity firms. Okay. Obviously, the quality is going to drop. And you have weekends where people are getting suckered into, pay me $10,000, come to my weekend event, and you're going to become a business flipper. I'm going to train you on how to be a mergers and acquisitions expert in a weekend. And you're going to buy businesses for no money down. So now you have even that cloud to what's going on in private equity, and the phone is ringing and your DMs are going off. Hey, have you ever thought about selling your business? And a business owner not knowing this stuff will go, oh, somebody wants my business. And they end up with somebody who just got off work at McDonald's and now is a mergers and acquisition person. And they call them up and they go, hey, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, yeah, I want to buy your business with no money down. Okay, fine. You want me to finance my portion of it. And they waste people's time. So private equity today is a horrific scenario for most business owners in a time frame when there's more liquid money to actually buy businesses than in any time in history. And so what we hyper focus on is custom tailored exits for business owners. That's all we do all day long. My team, I've had my over, 24 exits for myself, and we've been helping people exit. And all we do is we custom tailor it for whatever their outcome is. You want 15 million, you want 30 million, you want 10 million. All right, what asset do you have? Let's optimize it. And then let's put you into the pre-exit prep. Let's get you ready for due diligence. And then let's go get 10 or 12 of my relationships to fight over the price of your business, because they're fighting over businesses that have been custom tailored, and they're wiping the floor with other people that don't know what they're doing. So there's heaven and hell going on right now in private equity. And if business owners are in the driver's seat, if they just would realize that they are.
And part of that is understanding the market, but you also have to have a business that's sellable.
100%.
And to be able to understand that. And that comes back to kind of where we started, which is the self-development journey, because the business is a reflection of the owner. And if the owner's messed up, the business is messed up. So more often than not, the owner has to fix themselves to make their business, so to speak, be fixed and to be able to do that work. And, it's funny because we're talking about all these different events and things. I have always found if you go to self-development seminars, the people who actually bought the tickets tend to be a massive percentage are business owners. And then everybody else who has a ticket is who the business owner drug along to say, you got to learn this stuff.
Could not be more accurate.
That was a big aha for me. Why is it that everyone else isn't spending as much time on the self-development journey?
I can only speak, like I said, once I figured out that I was a outcast from society, called an entrepreneur at heart in my DNA, I stopped trying to figure out everybody else. I don't want to understand them. Look, my business life is focused on falling in love with the outcome of my target audience. That's the only time that I'm going to get into their psychology. And it's only going to be because of whatever product and or service. My wife and I own, a string of cannabis shops. We own, we're in the AI world on the software side, the hardware side of it. We're in healthcare, those kind of things. So what I want to know in those businesses that I own is the consumer of them. What is their pain? It's Big Weld. Look, I'll keep it really simple. You remember the movie Robots, where Robin Williams was the beat up robot in it? You should go watch it. It's a pretty good movie. There was a character in there that was the whole movie was centered around. Besides Robin Williams' character, he was a used parts robot. And the whole thing was, there was this great company and you could get new parts. But the owner of that company, the founder of that company, was a guy by the name of Big Weld. And he had built this entire ginormous business based on one concept: find a need, fill a need. And that's that's as simple as my business model is. And so in order for me to fill a need, I have to understand what that need is. I have to understand the psychology of the people that are utilizing that product and or service, right? It's there's a big opportunity for people in that space, but I don't spend a lot. I love the world has been changed, Rocky, by business owners. You could talk about, freedom of this, freedom of that, First Amendment, Second Amendment. You could talk about all of these things. But if it wasn't for the business owners of this world, you would not have air conditioning. You wouldn't have refrigeration. You wouldn't have medical advances. You wouldn't have hospitals. You wouldn't have anything that you see, the books behind you, this technology that we're talking on right now. That's business owners. There is no innovation without us. And so what I want to do is I want to, because I saw us get bullied in 2020 when we got called non-essential. The dumbest thing that that everybody bought hook, line, and sinker was that we were non-essential. And I went, how did we all just buy off on that? We're $18 trillion of this GDP. We're 60% of its hiring. It took me losing 2 friends to suicide during that period of time because they couldn't make payroll and their businesses were going under. For me to go, whatever I do in life, I'm going to come back to this because I fight bullies my entire life. And I feel like an entire group of people got bullied. And so that's why I do what I do in such a passionate level. The core business, the built to exit business that I own, if we never sold or helped or consulted for anybody, it doesn't impact my life at all. I don't do it for the money. I do it for the impact. I've got plenty of businesses, plus I sold and all this other kind of stuff. It's a weird place to be. And I'm the worst salesman for my company because of it. But at the end of the day, it really is the one of the rare. I see you as a sell side advocate, right? I see you as a business owner advocate. And that's very rare to have people that genuinely care about the business owner who is surrounded by tax people with their hands in the pocket, government with their hands in our pocket, the employees that we have to pay all of the stuff that we have to pay for that, the local economies, the schools that want money, the charities that want money. Who is ever really there to protect the small and mid-sized business owner? Me now, you with what you do, right? Sell side advocates are very rare, and we have to find each other and hang out with each other, which is why I'm glad I'm on your show.
And you're also a fan of Profit First as well.
Big fan. Yep. It's always within arm's reach as well. See, it's right. It's just to my left. One of those books. And this one, it's always, I have a new one because I'm always handing this out to business owners that I see. It's a great book.
Well, and it's a simple concept. I mean, even for your personal finances, right? Give your money a job, send it to do it, and don't let it do something else. And you're guaranteed to have financial success if you just do it and stay within your means. And I think for a lot of people, that is difficult to do. So when you're working with business owners, it's not easy because a lot of them have a whole lot of baggage. And we kind of talked about that. Do you help them get rid of the baggage, or how do you do that?
You have to. And again, it's perspective shifts that have changed my life. And the biggest point, one of the concepts that I learned in Profit First was Parkinson's law, right? Where your expenses expand to the level of revenue that you produce for yourself. And just in understanding that, my perspective shifted around the idea of everybody starts a business for a reason. And if you dove into that as a business owner and you come to the conclusion that the reason why you would own a business is to create freedom, not this fake like fortune cookie, everybody says it on every ad that they're talking about, but that sense in yourself that is very unique to Keith Cunningham's point, that every person is different, that every business it's not a bathrobe, one size does not fit all. It's very personal for me to look at my life and go, okay, I've got me, I've got my kids, I've got my future. And so sitting down and going, the reason why I'm building a business is to reach freedom. That freedom has a price tag. Now you set, okay, Instagram, the jets and the cars and the trips and all this stuff. And I set that next to what's really important to me, which is my freedom. And I go, both of them have a price tag and they're about the same. This keeps me a slave. This frees me. So it targets my mind and my excess profits into what's called my freedom account, right? And that freedom account is the only thing that matters until I'm free. So getting business owners to understand, I had a podcast with a very good friend of mine yesterday, and he was like, yeah, we try to teach this concept of delayed gratification. I said, no, the concept is redefined gratification. Redefine your gratification to being my freedom account. Excuse my language, but I'll drive my shitty car for 5 more years than I have to if my freedom account goes up by 30%. Right? I will stay in the house and stay in that house until my freedom account is 40%. It redirects the gratification from being drug into the marketing world of life, following somebody's marketing launch that they're going to make $80 million on, and you're going to spend $6,000 to $28,000 for yourself. No shade. Good for that person, but you're buying something from somebody else that you're not going to utilize for yourself because you have everything that you need in your hands already in terms of information and a business and all that kind of stuff. And that launch is not going to move the number from 95% failure rate to 93. It has to do with very personal. The person watching this has to make a different decision. And they have to look at that from that perspective of freedom. How much does my freedom cost me? Because there is an expense.
There is. And the same thing, I think, is on the personal side. Unfortunately, on the personal side, everyone said it's a goal of 65, which is a terrible way to live life.
Yeah.
But I always say the same thing. I walk into Costco and, those big screen TVs look beautiful. And so does something else. And it's always like, buy that, be unhappy. And I'm like, no. Buy that, have freedom. Oh, I'll take the freedom. I can wait and I can walk by that. But I've always had that counter to those choices throughout my life. And I guess a lot of people don't. And they don't realize it. They don't have the counter. And so they make a lot of those silly choices. And by the way, they didn't spend $6,000. Technically, that was a donation this weekend. If for those of you who happen to watch,
we're talking non-specifically now,
and they didn't even get the books because it wasn't sent to them. So yeah, I get it.
Yeah,
but that's we live across the board in the world of hype marketing.
We do. And good for them. Like I said, it's I don't have any problem with the people that play that game and win at it. I don't have any problem with it. I don't want to play the game like that. That's my choice. That's their choice. And I watch people that I think to myself, and I went through a phase of this because I think it's, you get to a place where you're like, oh, I'm so much better than them, and ethical versus unethical and all. Like they don't care about me. I don't care about them really. Like, who are the people that God puts in front of me to be able to help? And that's where I should focus my attention. I don't have any problem with the people that are shysters and grifters and great marketers. I don't have any problem with them per se. What I have the problem with is the people who refuse to do due diligence, right? Just do due diligence on, is that going to help you specifically? And get into a conversation. As I was telling my young friend the other day, I said, if you're going to go ahead and invest $6,000 or 28 grand or whatever it is, you got to act like you're borrowing that money from the mob. This is how I always look at it, because I'm borrowing money from myself because that's coming out of cash flow of my business. And I know if I put it back in and I hire somebody, I know what the ROI is going to be, right? If I put it into that program and I force myself to say, okay, great, I'm going to do it. I'm borrowing money from the mob to do it, and it needs to be paid back by this day or I'm going to lose a finger. Right? Now it's a different conversation. So if there is an ROI, fantastic. If there's not, why did you do it and don't do it again? But there's got to be people that take personal responsibility. And I think in terms of the wisdom that you were talking about earlier, Rocky, that I think the personal responsibility is the gap that is widened the most.
And basically what you're saying is control the controllables.
Exactly.
That's a major struggle for me, is just to focus on the controllables and to be wise enough to know what is and what isn't. And it's really hard to let go of the other stuff, because it's annoying. It's like, if you only did this, you got to let go, and letting go is not easy. It's a struggle.
Tough. It's tough. And you you don't do what we do with our shows and the kind of companies that we have. You don't do it without a deep sense of care for other people. And part of that care, it's like the rescues that I do. I got asked a while back by one of my mentors, like, hey, how are you holding up after seeing all that crap that you see, in those rescues? And I said, it's starting to get to me. It's actually starting to impact me. I'm a happy guy all the time, and it's just starting to get to me. And he said, maybe you should start thinking about whether you're doing it for you or you're doing it for them. He said, if you're doing it for them, there's no way that it's going to interrupt your joy, because that is unique to you, Jason. That's what drew you to it in the first place. That's what draws people to donate to it. It's what draws the team together when you're with them on these missions. And if you let that impact you, that's a selfish perspective. And it changed my life forever, that one conversation, that it's now about that one girl, right? It's now about that one business owner. It's now about that one person that we were able to feed. It's about that one domestic violence, person. It's about this one conversation I'm having with you, Rocky. Like, that's where I focus. And you see these things, these crazy things happen, and you see a lot of money that is being borrowed and put on credit cards and, taken from businesses, cash flow and that kind of stuff. And you want to say something, but it's not. It's about the one. It's about the next person that's going to listen to us. It's about that next person, because there's plenty of them, and that's really where we differ on our consulting side. We refer tons of people. We're not for everybody. In fact, we know we're only going to help 600 people probably in the next 5 years. They want to exit specifically for 15 to 30 million, and everybody else, they can benefit from our information. But I've got people that work with smaller companies. I've got people, I like to give out business, because there's not very many of us that are sell side advocates. And when I find them, they all become my friends.
How do you know that they're true to what you think they are?
I think that there is over time you develop the concept of due diligence. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wrong sometimes because I really, 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 really want to love somebody, like I do. And I really, really want to trust people and at their word. But I will tell you that I have become an incredible, like, I watched a bunch of your stuff right before I came on your show. I'm like, okay, it's called due diligence. Like, I'm not going to just walk on a show. I know who introduced us, and we both have massive respect for him. Right. And that's a big indicator. But I look at due diligence as a lost art. I'll give you one example for people that are watching. If you go to LinkedIn, the holy grail, the gold standard of doing due diligence on somebody is the recommendations that they have at the bottom of their LinkedIn. Now, a lot of business owners don't realize this, and they should get to work on it. Everybody's got people that love them. The one thing I would tell you is have them go to the recommendations area and put it on there. Why? Because there's a name attached to it. There's the words of them that's associated to it. You can reach out and talk to that person, right? And that you'll recognize this too. I have 3 people specifically in mind. One guy, I was on vacation with my kids, and we were at the Grand Wailea in Maui, one of the nicest hotels in the world. And I'm sitting there at dinner with my kids, and this guy comes running up to me and goes, "Oh my God, Jason, I just sold my business. I retired," in front of my kids and everything, right? It's a proud moment for me. He's like, "I sold my business, blah, blah, blah. Everything. I couldn't have done it without you. Thank you." Right. And he paid for dinner and like a whole bunch of stuff. And I said, "That's awesome, man. Could you do me a favor and say that for me on LinkedIn?" This is 5 years ago. Okay. Next story, another company, the guy, I was like, they reached out and they said, "Hey, Jason, we're getting ready to sell. We need your help. And by the way, oh my God, you put $8 million in my pocket that I never would have made had we not hired your company to help us, blah, 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 blah." I go, "Great. Could you put that in recommendations for me on LinkedIn?" And that was 3 years ago. I've since actually helped them sell their business since, right? So, and another person goes, "Hey, yeah, Jason, when we did that stuff, we went from 15 to 55 million. It was because of you. Could you put it on recommendations?" Right? This was just like 6 months ago. So the people that actually put the recommendations, that there's about 40 or 50 behind that you just couldn't convince to put the stuff on there in the first place, right? And in terms of people that have rip-off reports and all these other kind of things about them, there's also 40 to 50 on that side of it. So a little bit of due diligence goes a long way in our world, especially, Rocky, right? And that's how I find out more. And then I also have a good sense when I'm with people, what is their objective? What are they looking for? That kind of thing. So I'm wrong sometimes, but less than I used to be.
And you have to be proactively looking and be aware. And in today's world, they've learned how to do hype marketing quite well. They understand the psychology. And like you talked about with the car dealer, if you don't, then at least aware of what it is, you're going to get suckered. And you just have to let go of the FOMO and be okay with it at the end of the day.
Not missing anything.
What's one truth about success you wish more people understood?
Immediately, what comes to mind, one truth about success is that service, being a servant, there's a stigma around being a servant, and there's more joy. You can't have true success unless you have learned and mastered the art of being a servant. That takes a check mark on your humility. It takes a check mark on your use of resources. It takes a check mark on who you've decided to surround yourself with. And to redefine success in terms of personal choice, freedom, and the amount of joy that you experience, I believe that would be a big game changer for people to understand. It's never about things. It's always about who you're becoming and the people you surround yourself with.
And servant leadership is definitely big. It's one of our key principles in how I like to do things and the way we coach. What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
Nobody cares. Easy one. Easy answer for me. Nobody cares. Like in the earlier part of my life, I was like, this person, I'm doing everything for, my life, but people thinking about me, blah, blah. And I realized one day in a conversation, most impactful conversation that I ever had with Tony Robbins directly was when I realized the most important person in my life at that time before my wife was my mother. And he asked me directly, he goes, what do you think she's thinking about right now? And I go, well, I don't know. Why are you asking me that question? And then he sat there with that, that grin on his face, like, I'm not going to answer, and I go, oh shit, she's not thinking about me. And it just blew my mind. It was very lonely for a minute because I'm like, my entire life was built around what everybody else thought about me. And then I go, nobody's thinking about me. And then, wait, nobody's thinking about me. I go create and do whatever I want to. Nobody's thinking about me. And the people that care about what you're doing, where you live, what you drive, how much money you have, are a drain on your resources and don't care about you anyway and are talking crap behind your back anyway and can't wait for you to fail anyway. It's the people that don't care what you have that add value to your life and lift you up as long as you become one of them.
It's true. And when you let go of all of that, it just becomes easier to go have fun because you don't care.
Amen.
If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
Read the Bible.
There's a lot of wisdom in there. And there's a lot of money stories in there.
Yeah.
But here's what I have found. You can read the book, but it is not hard. It's not easy to understand the stories. There's a lot deeper into there. And unfortunately, I think too often you get people's interpretations that may or may not be right. So you really have to dig.
Yeah. And it's a one-on-one relationship, between you and God. And that conversation happens through the book. And again, I say read it because I wasn't a Christian until about 4 or 5 years ago, but I read the book as a child, cover to cover many times because I was beat up and thrown in my room so many times. And I just read them as a series of stories and got the understanding and the gist and the principles, to your earlier point, right? The principles of how to live a life and how to look things differently. And that's what kept me out of prison and out of jail, or prison and out of the grave, was the things that I absorbed from that book. I just think it's one of the greatest books ever written.
That it is. You have to take the time to learn it. And there are other, for other people of other faiths, most of those books are pretty intense. Go pick the one you like and study it and learn the wisdom and make it your own.
Yeah. I've read all of them. Not all of the major, but probably the top 9 top religions. I still find the Bible the most instructive to me. That's just my choice. But to your point, it's a personal choice.
It's a personal choice. If people would like to learn more about you and find you, what's the best way for them to do that?
JasonSisneros.com is easy. And then if you're on the business side, and we've got a couple of free resources and a way to get to our podcast, which Rocky, I hope you come on someday. I'd be honored to have you to talk more about Profit First and your experience as well. That you can go to builttoexit.biz. builttoexit.biz, and that's the TO. So it's BUTOEXIT .biz.
We'll put that in the show notes. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, brother. Appreciate you.
Hey, thanks for checking out the full unedited video of the Richer Soul podcast. You can get the full audio podcast with intro, outro, and a ton more details here on YouTube or whatever your favorite podcast player is. Don't forget, we've got hundreds of episodes for you to go back through, and you can also get episode information on the Richer Soul website as well. Don't forget to subscribe so you're automatically updated as to what's going on and every time we release a new episode. The first few episodes of the Richer Soul podcast actually lay out the entire framework that everything is built on over all of these years. So check them out as well. Thanks for listening.